I agree with and appreciate the words of our senior Senator Orrin Hatch, my friend and colleague. He used an appropriate image a few minutes ago when he referred to the states having to go back to Congress time and time again, hat in hand. It reminds me of a song by a Scottish rock band called the Proclaimers. The name of the song, interestingly enough, is Cap in Hand. And the chorus of the song contains the words, "I can't understand why we let someone else rule our land." I don't know whether the Proclaimers have ever toured in Utah, but I hereby invite them to come to our state. When we became a state over a century ago, we were given a promise that some will insist was explicit in Section 9 of the Statehood Enabling Act. Others will say was implicit, if not explicit. But the understanding, based on what had happened in other states, was that eventually the federal government would no longer continue to hold all of this land in perpetuity. Now, let's all think for a minute about concerns that we might have if any one landowner owned more than, say, 5% of the land mass in our state. It might bring up some concerns. I'm pretty sure it would, regardless of whether that owner was an individual, a corporation, a nonprofit institution, or something else. People might be worried about the possibility that that person or entity would use its influence to keep people off of land, to keep people off of their own land, restricting ingress and egress, perhaps using the domination over the marketplace because of the massive land ownership to micromanage that state's economy. Anything that landowner did would have a pretty significant impact, an unduly large impact on that state's economy. Now all of a sudden, imagine what happens if that land ownership of that individual or corporation becomes no longer 5%, but say 10%, 20, 30, 40%. Pretty soon, it's 2/3 of the land in the state. Pretty soon, you've got a landmass that looks like the island archipelago represented in that map over there. That's the private land. And all of a sudden, that landowner says, in addition to owning all this land and controlling access to and across all other lands, that the landowner is declaring itself exempt from all state and local taxation. That has a huge economic impact on that state's economy. And that's exactly the scenario that we have here in Utah. This bill is a step in the right direction. This bill is a first step toward reclaiming some of what has been lost because of this. Now, I want to clarify a few things about this legislation. Number one, this bill is in no respect against public lands. We here in Utah, the 3 million people that call Utah our home, love our public lands. We love having access to public lands where we can recreate and do all kinds of things. This bill is not about not having public lands. It's about deciding who administers them. It's about deciding who bears the cost of them. Should Utahns have to bear the cost of this kind of ownership situation, or should all Americans share it? If the federal government wants to own all of this land, it should be treated in many respects just like any other landowner who has to give their share, and not make what they curiously call a PILT payment. Senator Hatch referred to it, the payment in lieu of taxes. If any of us wrote a check to the federal government saying, I'm not going to pay what I owe under federal tax law, but I will pay you what I feel like I can pay and what I feel like paying. It's my payment in lieu of taxes, my PILT check. Well, we'd be locked up. The federal government does it to us, giving us a tiny pittance of the portion of taxes that would otherwise be going into our state's education system, toward funding state and local services that we desperately need, that Utah's residents deserve. And we continue to take it year after year. That's why I commend our legislature and our governor for having the nobility, the courage to stand up and start a conversation that is perhaps overdue, but whose time has come. Utah's best days are yet ahead of her. This bill moves us in that direction. Thank you very much.